is justify your business. And that's almost where the trend happened in human resources, is to split HR from L&D. Because what started to happen is people started to develop an edge in terms of understanding the financial benefits of it. And then how do you optimize your levies? Because irrespective of tax legislation, you still had the levies. So if we went to the food and bev SETA, and that's why we used to partner on non-competitive issues with Tiger and with premium brands, is you would say, actually, it's costly for actually us to do the whole qualification. But what if the three of us split the qualification? There's core, fundamental, and elective. Actually, we are a traditional baker. Let us do the fundamentals. Premium, you're a baby compared to us. Why don't you take core? Because it's the basic skills. Electives, Tiger Brands, you're the guys who innovate, you're the leaders in bread. Take electives, because there you're dealing with subjects that are far more innovatively based. And actually what used to happen is your learners would attend your academy for fundamentals, they went to another one for core and elective. The whole point is then we all actually benefited, because our learners were all going through the same concept of registered academies, even though the academy, a portion of it was outsourced. And qualitatively that looked good, because it showed that your learners were not just, their context wasn't only your business. Now, that concept has fallen away because of more of the competitive edges. So if you see Aspen today, Aspen and Clicks will both run the pharmacy program, but for their own learners only. Because, and it's a natural thing, you build in your competitive advantage into the learning process. So what then happened is companies, that would be, for example, a full qualification. But very often you would get, like in retail, so in TFG, they would have, and there's a lot within the WNR SETA, would say, what would be a basic program that a stock controller can do? So that's not a full qualification, but that might be 4 unit standards. And actually, guys, we don't want to do full unit standards. Our people don't have the capacity. Some of them have never completed the required NQF levels. Let us register a smaller scope, where then you don't register as an FET, so accreditation is not as rigorous. You are registered as an accredited service provider for modules. So now what happens is you don't comply with the same rules of an FET. You now only comply with the rules of the SETA. So a full learnership has got, and FET requirements are far more rigorous because the Department of Higher Education get involved, and you've structurally got to set up a lot more of the compliance elements. But you can understand why, because you're actually saying I'm an educational institute. Whereas when you're doing a skills program, what you are picking, you are cherry picking the stuff that you are the expert as. So you can't go to any college or university at the moment and say, teach my people how to be a pay point controller. They don't teach that stuff. So you are naturally the expert, and then you would do the normal accreditation process. However, the rules are the same. You first gain provisional accreditation, 2 years, you've got to prove that you can do it, and then you get the full.
And if a company was looking at these options, why would they choose the more onerous FET, being an accredited FET, as opposed to doing a skills development program? When would one make more sense than the other?
This is then directly aligned to your strategy, and it's directly aligned to your core business model. So if your core business model, whether you Philip Morris, whether you Pioneer Foods, whether you Clicks, so if you look at those 3 businesses, they would say my core skill set is pharmacist assistance or pharmacy. Pioneer Foods, it is manufacturing, plant baking, or plant maintenance. And thirdly, it for Philip Morris, it's tobacco.
So
now,
these are things where if they didn't have the skills, they can't scale the business.
That's it. So it's on, generally the National Skills Plan will guide you, where they say these are your scarce skills. Nobody trains this stuff formally anywhere. The specialists are sitting within the business. Often you're encouraged as a business to do it, especially if you've had the older white male who's been around, who holds it all in their head. It's often an opportunity to retain the retired skill. So you would look at your business in totality and say, I want to retain these guys who've been around for 30 to 40 years. I want them to add value. I'd like to make some money and pay my own way through. I'd like to create longevity around the profession, and I would like to actually accelerate the development of skills in the area. And then you do that. Whereas if you...
Sorry, just on that, before we move off that, so there are industries where there are scarce skills that allow you to scale. So for example, call center team leaders, and that it's not trained outside that. QA managers, both of those have been around 20, 30 years.
Yes.
They evolved, but they've been there.
Yes.
Whereas I'd imagine there's some sectors, like perhaps IT, where there are core skills right now that allow you to scale, but within 2 or 3 years, they might have evolved so much that actually it's a different skill set because the software's changed. So those sort of things, you do a skills program, not become accredited in FET, even though those skills are critical for growth right now.
Well, there's a strategy there. So if you do become registered as an FET and you dimension data, okay, or you merchants or whoever, so you're going to register your qualification and as an FET. It allows you to be a lot more agile. So what tends to happen is, software is developing, because remember, the whole concept is to have a 30 to 40% in classroom and a 60 to 70% in the workplace. Now, as business, we have a lot more control and accessibility to the 70-60%, which is impacted by the updates. So if you are in a technology advanced industry, and I remember UEC Technologies, where it was it was electronic engineers, set-top box technology. They registered their own FET, because what you automatically wanted to do is, when technology updated, we had a head of technology who then worked with an SME within the FET portion, and immediately it was trained in an updated module. So I wouldn't say you wouldn't register. It might actually be to your benefit to do that, because then you've got more flexibility with updating the learning material.
The actual curriculum. Okay.
And then the assessment becomes more relevant.
And if you're doing the skills development, to register a new program via the CETA is far more onerous and slow.
I don't think it's about, it is onerous always. The issue around pace is about how ready you are. So the stuff that and I'm going to use Clicks as an example. So Clicks had provisional accreditation for 7 years. For 7 years, they could not get full accreditation. So when I walked in, I thought it's impossible that for 7 years you cannot get, because when you get provisional accreditation, the grounds on which you get it, and then you don't get full accreditation when they audit you, is there's what they call a minor findings against you, which there's a compliance element. Just meet that compliance. Now, very often the issues have been around the quality management system. So what it's saying to you is, you're focusing so much on facilitation and assessment, we're not seeing qualitatively, are you updating that? How often are you updating it? Because your business changes. 2, we can't see that there's sufficiently external auditing happening to say that you are qualitatively in line. Thirdly, if your learning material has not shown that you are using relevant research. I mean, if you look at UNISA, any distance university, people say, oh yeah, now it's edition 3, I can't buy edition 2. That's because publications are updating what's relevant to the learner. Now, if you are using the same learner manual for 2 years, a CETA is going to look back at you and say, but it can't be relevant, surely. So what tends to happen is, we just did accreditation now. I did a submission for a small provider. We did 2.5 hours with the CETA, and I've probably had to do 2 hours of closing the gap after we submitted. Our biggest, and my lesson has been to them, your biggest influencer is get the quality assurance manager to actually attend a portion of the program. Because what do? They sit and do a desktop evaluation. Now they're waiting for qualitative information. But very often companies don't invite the CETA to actually attend in their environment what they're doing, because they're overly cautious, they don't want to reveal for competitive reasons what they're doing. But if you actually have a far more open approach with the CETA, you're probably going to get through your accreditation quicker. So with W&R at the moment, we anticipate we'll get our feedback on accreditation, and they've told us within 10 working days. That's quick. And that's a skills program that's probably 30% of a full qualification. So for a full qualification, because, and if you do integrated assessment, so the other thing that takes very slow is how did you design assessment? So a full qualification, for example, might be 13 subjects. Are you assessing 13 subjects? Because now, for the CETA to go through a learner guide, an assessment toolkit, a moderation toolkit for 13 subjects might take them 13 weeks. Have you been and applied your mind to creatively doing integrated assessment? So yes, we've got 13 modules, but I can use 4 assessment tools and I can build an alignment grid. So one of the things the CETA told me is when we presented the grid, and now we've just contracted an external moderator through them, is he said, I've never seen such a comprehensive alignment grid. People overcome